Alright, you bastards, it's time for a story from my life, and I'm going to talk about all the pets that I've had throughout my, relatively short life, 21 years, and all of them, or at least most, I don't want to give away any spoilers, have died, obviously. So, I've gone through a lot of pets, a lot more than people usually do. A good buddy of mine has had the same dog for like 14 years, another buddy of mine had the same one for 13 years until it died. I was going to say passed away, and then I was like, Jesus, how weird is it to use a euphemism for death like passed away when you're talking about a fucking animal? Like, who cares? Like, I mean, I know you care a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not like this monumentous occasion when a dog dies. Like, I guess it could be, but in most circumstances, you don't want to say, like, Pipsy, Pipsy was a good dog, but she's in a better place. Like, you just don't say shit like that with animals. So, anyway, let's get started. I'm going to go in chronological order. Number one, it was a dog that my grandparents bought, and it was a little tiny, I don't even remember what kind, I guess a little mutt, a little dark mutt, and they got it when I was 2 or 3, I think maybe even 2 years old, and we were sitting in the back of the truck after getting it, because my grandparents own a farm, and so we were in the back of the truck. And my grandpa decided to let me name it, and I'm sure he thought I was going to name it Spot, or like, some weird thing that a child would name it, and he was right. I decided out of nowhere to name my first dog Felicia, which, is there any more of a name that brings up the sight of a black receptionist in like a Tyler Perry movie than friggin' Felicia? Like, what the hell was I thinking? I don't know, I was 2, don't ask questions. They were just like, all right, Felicia it is. And so Felicia hung out for a little while, I think for like 6 months, and then Felicia actually became vastly interested in activity in the middle of a road in a small country area. And so Felicia was promptly crushed and killed by some sort of trucker. Not his fault at all, just this dumbass dog that was not trained and ran out there, and Felicia got her ass handed to her. Or no, wait, it was his ass. I named this boy dog Felicia. How much sense does that make? No idea. I'm sure I didn't understand the subtleties of gender at the time. So that was number one. That was Felicia. Felicia passed away oh so long ago. I guess like 93, 92. So next, it was a fish, and the name of this fish was Fish Named Gil. Now, I was still young when I got it, and me and my brother came to the consensus that we didn't want to name it Gil, we wanted to name it Fish Named Gil. And so every time you referred to it, you had to say, look at Fish Named Gil over there. And it really didn't make sense, not a very good way to structure your language, but Fish Named Gil was a piranha. And one day, one fateful evening, when we were in the process of moving, my dad left Fish Named Gil's tank out in the garage, and lo and behold, the next day we walked out and Fish Named Gil had died. He had actually OD'd on freezing weather in the middle of a goddamn garage in like January. So poor old Fish Named Gil. I think we buried him in a box outside, probably only to be later dug up by a cat and gnawed on as some sort of, meh, decent feast, whatever. But that was Fish Named Gil. That was number 2. Going on to number 3 was Beans, and Beans was a big, fluffy Maltese kind of dog, but I'm not sure what he was bred with, because it wasn't a purebred Maltese. It was quite a bit larger than a Maltese. If you guys have seen my videos where I show you Tobo, my current dog, it's a small white dog like that, but it's about, 50% bigger than Tobo, pretty much the same shape. And Beans' big problem was that most dogs will eat anything, like anything at all, but this dog would eat anything at all, plus everything that even most dogs won't eat. Like, he was eating huge plastic toys, he was eating my lightsabers, and not just gnawing on them and ruining it, and leaving those little, pock marks from his teeth. He was legitimately eating our lightsabers and eating my plastic toys. I can still remember to this day that at my grandparents' house, we brought him down once, and I had this awesome, badass shark toy that was so cool and rubbery, and one fateful night I left it out, and the next morning I came out, and all I could find was just half of the tail of this rubber shark. And just understand, this was no trifling rubber shark. This was like a foot-long, big, thick, giant, phallic shark. And this dog just gnawed it to pieces, killed it. Eventually, I'm pretty sure Beans just became so old and full of plastic and lighters and rocks and acorns and just whatever the hell that dog would eat. Like, you could literally put an Xbox controller down, and if you turned your head, he would start having a goddamn feast. Like, you couldn't let this dog be alone for a second. So, Beans passed away. He was pretty much the shoe nice of my dog collection, except even, more ridiculous. Although we didn't give him alcohol, not to my knowledge. So, Beans passed away, overdosing on ridiculousness. And that brings us to number 4. And number 4, we're another fish. It seemed like we kind of traded off with fish and dogs because my parents would be like, "Oh shit!" It's almost like our sons are just like murdering these dogs in really mysterious ways because they keep dying so fast. And so we bought 2 more fish, and I'm still relatively young at this point, probably 5, 6, or no, I guess I was 7, and my younger brother was 5, and so we got 2 fish, one for each of us, and he named his fish Dog. And I named my fish Soldier because my fish kind of had and I named mine first. I can still remember sitting there, and he's probably too young to remember, but mine was kind of speckled, almost camo colored, and so I was like, I'm going to name my fish Soldier because it looks like a soldier, and I was 7 years old feeling proud, like, yeah, that was clever, that's good, Taylor. And then Nathan, my younger brother, just goes, "My fish is brown. I'm going to name it Dog because dogs are brown." And so then he named it Dog, which was really dumb, and it pissed me off because, like, no, Nathan, you can't name it Dog, because in my head I had this ridiculous, idea that these are going to be 2 badass fish friends. I want to be like, name it Ranger or something like that. And he's like, nope, it's Dog. And I'm like, well, shit. All my fantasies just fell into the toilet and got flushed. And so they stayed around for a little while until I was fishing one day with my grandparents down at their farm, and I caught a bluegill. And this bluegill was too big to, throw back, but too little to just eat and have a feast. So I was like, I want to keep this fish, and we can take it and put it in the tank when we get home to live with Dog and Soldier. And even a small bluegill is immensely larger than these tiny little fish. It was almost like throwing a giant, a tiger into a tabby cat exhibit. And so we threw him in there at one night right before we went to bed, and we were like, oh, cool, they're all going to get along so well. And so then we went to bed, and we woke up the next morning, and it turns out that the bluegill did not take kindly to Soldier or Dog, because when we went over to the tank, he had pretty much eaten them alive, and they were still swimming around. Like, I can still picture Dog with one of his eyes ripped out and the other one dangling from just a thread from his eye socket, and he's just barely swimming still. I don't know how he was just still going, and so many of his his scales were torn, just shorn apart, just flesh showing. Like, this is freaking eating them alive, like cannibalized them in the middle of the goddamn night. And so then my dad was like, well, shit, because this was like the first night that we had it. So then we flushed Dog, Soldier, and this bluegill down the toilet, and the bluegill fought back a little bit, but the toilet won. You can't fight the toilet. That's modern technology. You're just a goddamn fish. Get used to it. So